All right. I went live faster than I planned to, but that's okay. Hey, folks. I'm Chuck Holton, and I wanted to do a quick live for you here. Let me get this set up a little bit. Just look around. I'm in a shopping area. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Hang on, I'm in this zombie apocalypse looking shopping area with a literal horror movie full of birds in the trees up there above my head. And so I'm gonna get this set up. Then I'm gonna try to move away from these birds because, man, they're going crazy. Okay, hey, thank you. Man, you guys are already donating money. I haven't even got started yet. God bless you, everybody. Hello. I'm leaving the microphone off. I mean, just using the camera mic here because if siren goes off or anything like that happens, I want you to be able to hear everything. I'm in the northern town of Kiryat Shimona in Israel. Kiryat Shimona is it's the largest city in the very far northern tip of Israel. And it's evacuated, as you can see. I mean, look at this. I think that this pharmacy is actually open, maybe. But if you look around here, I'll pan around very slowly. Look at this. This whole shopping center, which normally would be, well, I guess everything would be closing anyway because it's just now Shabbat. But it looks like this when it's not Shabbat up here because this entire town has been evacuated for more than a week. That's because if we rotate around this way and we look at these mountains over here, very beautiful scenery. Those mountains right back there are in Lebanon, the other side of the mountains. And so it's just a couple of kilometers from Lebanon into Israel right here. And so it's very, very fast if they decide to throw a missile at us. I'm kind of south of town a little bit. And so I'm not wearing my body armor because it's been very quiet. Now that I've said that, watch, the alarm will go off. But it's been very quiet today, and let me tell you why. The commander of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, was giving a speech today in Beirut. Now, that's notable because Hassan Nasrallah has essentially been in hiding. He's the commander of Hezbollah. He's essentially, for the last couple of years, all of his speeches have been taped from an undisclosed location, things like that. This is the first time he's actually come out in public. And you might wonder, how could he do that safely and not get bombed by Israel? Because Israel would definitely like to knock this guy off. Meanwhile, while I'm speaking here, there's a ton of rockets coming out of Gaza that are headed toward Tel Aviv. So Hamas is still firing rockets out of Gaza. It's unbelievable. It's firing them all around in that Gaza envelope. So it's obvious that the Israelis would love to get Hassan Nasrallah, but he did this speech and he was surrounded by 100,000 people. And so and he was basically daring the Israelis to drop a bomb on the assembled gathering. Some people might have said that would be a target-rich environment, but obviously that would lose Israel the information war, and that's exactly what they don't need right now. Israel is struggling mightily to try to gain some ground on that front. From an information standpoint, Israel is, I would say, behind. They're losing the information war, and that's mostly because the vast majority of Western media is rooting for Hamas. And like, for example, the Associated Press, which is supposed to be kind of the gold standard of, neutral, unbiased journalism. If you go to their website, you almost can't find anything about what's going on in Israel. You almost can't find anything about the struggle or the suffering that's happening to Israelis. All you hear about on the AP website is Gaza, 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 Palestinian suffering. They're taking all of the numbers coming straight from the Hamas representatives and reporting them as fact, when everybody knows that obviously, whatever you think about Hamas, they have a vested interest in reporting numbers that are skewed and exaggerated in order to try to turn public opinion against the Israelis. And they've actually been doing a pretty good job at that. Oh, there's a bunch of, I think they're ducks flying south up there. I don't know if you can see that. A whole bunch of ducks. Anyway, I wanted to do the live from this location tonight because I want you to see the effects of this war on everyday people. This is the effect that it's having on everyday people. It looks like COVID all over again. Everything's closed. People are not going out, which means people are not going to work, which means people are not getting paid. Now, if you remember what I've been talking about over the last couple days, that Arabs can come into Israel to work, and tens of thousands of them do. Palestinian Arabs from the Judea and Samaria area, the West Bank, as the West likes to call it, they cross into the parts that are administered by Israel and work in factories and stores, and I've met some of them while I've been here. And so even those Arabs are hurting because of what happened on October 7th, because of this war. Everybody is suffering economically here. The vast majority of the young men and women who would be staffing most of these stores have been called up, and they're off training or at the front. That is costing not only the government of Israel a tremendous amount of money, but it's costing the economy here a tremendous amount of money. And for that reason, everybody wants to see this thing end sooner rather than later. They realize when you talk about a pause, or when you talk about a ceasefire, what you're saying is that you want to drag this thing out longer and make it last much, much longer. Any pause or ceasefire, according to the Israelis that I talked to, would be a win for Hamas. Hamas would be able to claim that they had vanquished the Israelis, killed a bunch of Jews, and got them to give up on the idea of eradicating Hamas. And it would drag out the conflict to the point where this economic disaster you see behind me just continues on and on and on, and essentially cripples the Israeli economy for could be years. I've talked to some people who know some farmers, Israeli farmers, who rely on foreign workers to harvest their crops. This is harvest season, October, November. And when October 7th happened, all of their foreign workers got on a plane and went home. Can't blame them there. We're talking about people from Thailand and Cambodia and stuff like that. And so they all went home, and now the guy that had 700 employees that would have been harvesting his persimmons or his pomegranates now has nobody left to harvest, and the fruit is just rotting on the vine. They can't get the fruit out, they can't get it to market, and so it just rots. Well, then those trees, obviously they've got that down to a science, and as they're being harvested, they need to be pruned and, you know, taken care of, getting ready for winter, and there's nobody to do that. So those trees actually could need to be destroyed, and they'd have to start over from scratch. Suffice it to say that the farmers are telling me that it could literally be 2 years before they can recover from this, and that's if this thing gets over very quickly. So serious problems economically there, and that's not getting enough airtime in the media. Something else that you're not hearing in the media is the fact that Israel is actually giving humanitarian aid to people inside Gaza. Now, I'm going to carry you over here for a minute, even though these birds are freaking me out. They're scary. I got to go get my drink. Hey, thank you for the super chat. Folks, you can support CBN's news gathering by going to cbn.com or by giving right here in the chat, just by going to that super thanks or super chat down there and hitting that button, and then you can donate directly here on YouTube. If you have questions, you can ask them, and our producers will send them to me, because I can't read all the ones that are going by here. There's just too many of them, and they get all stacked up on my phone. Somebody gave me a good idea, though. I was asking if anybody could figure out why they get stacked up on my phone and I can't read them. And somebody from the last live I did wrote and said, you've got your font set too big. And that is probably the problem, because I can't see very well without my glasses, my reading glasses on, because I'm 54 years old. And so the font is too large, and they're stacking up on top of each other. So I'm gonna have to try that. I'll try to reduce the font and see if that helps. But it's not that big a deal, because I wouldn't be able to read all those anyway. Really, this chat is kind of distracting as I'm trying to go through the day's news. I love to be able to interact with all you, like those that are especially giving to support our work, but at the same time, it makes me kind of scatterbrained, right? I'm kind of scatterbrained anyway, as it is. So, I'm here in Kiryat Shimona, the far northern tip of Israel. It sticks into Lebanon. Lebanon is, again, those mountains right over there. That's Lebanon. They're very tall. Actually, I think Lebanon is on the back side of those mountains, because the front side is not Lebanon for sure. But suffice it to say that Lebanon goes all the way around. Hey, thank you for the super chat. Goes all the way around to the north, and even a little bit on the east, I think. So that's where those rockets and everything have been fired from. Yesterday, when I got here, right about this time, it was very active. There were a lot of rockets flying both directions. And those are the ones that landed right in downtown, blew up a storefront and a couple of cars out right kind of on Main Street there. Big fires. Another rocket landed up on the side of that mountain over there and caught the mountain on fire, which they eventually put out. Only 2 people were wounded in that exchange yesterday on this side, and both of them are going to be okay. The reason that only 2 people were wounded, though, is because this town has been, evacuated. There's very, very few people here except journalists and army. And now it's been very quiet here tonight, and I wanted to point that out because it's usually Friday, after Friday prayers, things typically ramp up. They get more violent because these extremists go to the mosque and they listen to their firebrand preacher, get them all riled up, and then they come out and they're ready to kick some butt, do battle, you know. So the strange thing is that hasn't happened tonight yet. And I think because of this speech, Hassan Nasrallah, the commander of Hezbollah, gave a speech tonight, and everybody was waiting to see, is he going to declare war on Israel? Well, he didn't. He didn't declare war on Israel. He made lots of noise about how this was Israel's fault and they deserved everything they got, and we're honoring the martyrs of October 7th, blah, 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 all that kind of thing. But he also said, and this is telling, he said, the Palestinians planned and executed this thing without telling anybody beforehand. So he kind of threw them under the bus. He kind of put it all on them, right? And so I'm taking that to be sort of, you know, indicative of the fact that they don't want to get involved. He does not want to get involved in this thing any more than they already are. Israel, for their part, has made it very clear, both Benjamin Netanyahu and the chief of the armed forces here have come out in the last couple of days and said, if Hezbollah decides to get involved, they are not going to know what happened. We're going to hit them so hard. We're going to hit them harder than anything they have ever seen. So maybe that served to dissuade them somewhat. Also, I'm told that during this speech in Beirut, 100,000 or more people around, Hassan Nasrallah in the middle giving a big firebrand speech, 2 Israeli fighter jets went blasting by overhead, and you know, the shockwave of breaking the sound barrier on purpose, just to sort of give a warning, just to let them know if we wanted to bomb you right now, we could. Hey, thank you for the super chat. I'm assuming you might have a question there. Let's see if I can get to that. It's going by so fast I can't. Well, we'll just have to have our producers send me that question if you got a question, because it's flying by so fast I can't read it. So, because Hassan Nasrallah did not declare war, it may be that we're in for a quiet night. We can pray for that, can't we? That would be fantastic. So the question I asked at the beginning of on the title of this thing is this World War III? Well, we have a limited war, a total war between Russia and Ukraine, but it's limited to Russia and Ukraine so far. We have a regional-ish conflict here in Israel, between Israel and Hamas. And there's been some combat from Hezbollah. Man, those birds are going crazy. There have been some, obviously, serious back and forth fighting here in the north between Hezbollah. And actually, the rockets that came in yesterday were not from Hezbollah. They were from Hamas in Lebanon. So Hamas isn't just in the Gaza Strip. Hamas has people in... Probably just lost my audio. Hang on a minute. I've got to turn my do not disturb on or people are going to bump us off. Okay. Hamas has people in the West Bank. They have people in Lebanon and probably elsewhere. The leadership of Hamas definitely is not going to live in Gaza. They're going to live somewhere nice, like maybe, you know, UAE or Qatar or Beirut. If you haven't been to Beirut, Beirut is actually a pretty nice place. It's not as bad as you might imagine. I've talked about that before. People my age remember Beirut as the Green Line. Thank you, Rick. Wow, that's very nice of you to donate like that. Thank you. They remember the Green Line. They remember the civil war in Lebanon and, you know, how bad it was back then. I've been to Lebanon several times, and it's actually pretty nice, as long as you don't get sideways with Hezbollah. The last time I went to Lebanon, as the plane was descending into the airport in Beirut, everybody on the plane stood up and started shouting, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. And I was kind of trying to make myself very small over in the window seat. When I got to the airport, we were doing a documentary about the 30th anniversary of the Beirut barracks bombing, the Marine barracks there. And that was right at the airport, where the barracks were. So we wanted to film it. Well, somebody said, well, you got to go talk to Hezbollah because they control all the area around the airport. And we were like, go talk to Hezbollah? And they're like, yeah, their office is right down the hall here. So we were in the airport, and we went walking down the hall, and we went in, talked to this guy, big fat guy in a little uniform, and very nicely asked him if we could make some footage around the, there. And he said, if you take pictures of our airport, your picture will be in the paper tomorrow. We were like, okay, I guess we won't be filming anything around the airport. So what we did was we took a really long lens. We went up on the mountainside above the airport and just filmed down onto the airport from up there. But other than the parts that are, right around the airport there that are controlled by Hezbollah, there are some very nice places in Beirut and beautiful beaches, nice restaurants, things like that. I almost got killed in southern Lebanon one time because I accidentally almost drove into a Palestinian refugee camp, which would have been very, very bad. And the little voice in the back of my head was screaming at me not to go through that checkpoint. And I was like, well, I'll just stop and ask those soldiers a question to see if I can get directions to get out of here. I mean, I'm a soldier. I like soldiers. And this voice in my head was saying, no, do not, get out, get out. And for once, I finally listened to that voice in the back of my head, and I turned around, and later on, I talked to a guy who said, oh, if you had pulled up to that checkpoint, they would have killed you, and they would have been heroes for it. And I was like, from me to that tree, from the checkpoint, was kind of bad. And I was all by myself at 9 o'clock at night. Not good. Anyway, so I don't think that this is World War III, because it really can't be World War III if the United States isn't directly involved in the fighting, because we're the major superpower on Earth. Now, Russia, you have Russia, China, Iran, and the United States. Russia is definitely engaged directly. Everybody else is not engaged directly at this point. But the Ukraine war is a proxy war between Russia and the West. This war is not a proxy war necessarily, because the Arabs really do want to kill off all the Jews. They really want to wipe out all the Jews. But there is an element of proxy war there because they see the United States as the great Satan, right? And the U.S. is kind of directly involved in this war because we have signals, airplanes going overhead. We have drones overhead. I can hear a drone right now going overhead. I'm sure it's not, well, I don't know. Could be one of ours, but I don't think so. The United States has special operators that are doing stuff in Gaza, no question about that. But we don't have infantry troops on the ground. We don't have tanks. We're not bombing. The United States is not bombing any place over here. And right now, Israel doesn't need us to. It's enough that we have 2 carrier groups offshore in the Med, and they are enough of a deterrent, hopefully, that it'll kind of keep a lid on things. That's one of the things that the United States military does very well, is we function as a deterrent. We just go kind of stand there in bad places around the world and go, yeah, if one of our guys were to get killed, things would go very, very badly for the people who did it out here. Now, that's always been the case historically, but now what we're seeing is that, we have American troops at bases in Syria. We have American troops at bases in Iraq, and we have American troops in Jordan. And they are being attacked on a daily basis over there, Iraq especially, and Syria. We've had something like a couple of dozen U.S. troops wounded in the past 3 weeks by those attacks. And those attacks are very clearly being directed by Iran. And so if they're very clearly being directed by Iran, it's very surprising to me that the United States military is not directly responding. They have done precious little. Lloyd Austin has got up there and, well, if we do it again, they're going to be in big trouble. Kind of blathered about, we're going to take it to them if they keep doing this. But I guess you could say that the United States military has gotten into the business of turning the other cheek. Now, turning the other cheek is a great thing for you and me that we're commanded to do as individuals. But a government is not commanded to turn the other cheek. And that's different. The government's job is to safeguard its people. And safeguarding its people means safeguarding its interests. And so if we have troops stationed somewhere, people should be so afraid to attack us that they won't do it. If they're not so afraid to attack us, because we don't respond when they attack us, we're putting all of our troops and, in fact, all American citizens in more danger. America needs to take a hard line. Like, you mess with an American and you're like the Marine Corps guy said the other day, someone else will raise your children. But we need to back that up. We can't just use rhetoric to get that point across, because the people that we're dealing with don't understand anything but violence. And the precise, righteous application of violence typically is what keeps wars from happening, not starts wars. And so the United States might think about that if we want to avoid getting into World War III. Suffice it to say that of the 22 countries around the world that are currently engaged in armed conflict, so we go about, Ukraine and Russia, we have Armenia, Azerbaijan, we have Israel and Lebanon, we have Iran, there's fighting in Iraq, there's fighting in South Sudan, well, most of Africa, a lot of Africa, there's a lot of fighting. And that's not even counting Detroit and Chicago and Baltimore and places like that. But of the 22 countries where there is armed conflict right now, none of them seem to be spilling over into a larger conflict outside of the boundaries of that region or whatever. Is there a possibility that could happen? Absolutely, there is. And one of the things that the United States, I think, has been trying to do has been to keep that from happening, keep it from boiling over into a larger conflict, using all the tools at their disposal. Whether or not that happens here in Israel remains to be seen. So far, since Nasrallah has finished his speech, I was expecting that if he declared war, right now we would be taking cover, because there would be just scads of rockets coming over here from the border, which is only a couple of kilometers right over that direction, over by the mountains over there. It's getting dark now. Can you guys hear that drone? Sounds like a weed eater in the sky. And those guys, what they're doing up there, that drone is watching for groups of Hezbollah fighters that have been approaching the border to set up firing positions so they can fire artillery over here. If they can fire artillery, because we're definitely within the range of artillery, 10 kilometers is easy for artillery. I'm talking about big guns. A couple of kilometers would be okay even for mortars, and they have been firing some mortars from over there. So those drones are up there circling all the time, watching to see if anybody's setting up a mortar position to drop mortars on us, because somebody was asking, why didn't the Iron Dome intercept those missiles that came in yesterday and hit inside town? Well, the IDF is very, very good about figuring out where the missiles are going to go. And so I'm thinking that the one that landed up on the side of the mountain, they figured out right away that it was not going to hit in a populated area, and they didn't bother. The one that hit right in the middle of downtown, however, it's one of two things. Either the IDF has made the calculation that because the city has been evacuated, that lives are not at stake, every time they fire that Iron Dome system, it's like $50,000, and they do have a limited supply of those. So they're probably saving them to see if Hezbollah is going to light them up with 1,000 rockets tomorrow. And so that, look, if rockets coming into Kiryat Shimona, we're not going to shoot it down because there's very few people left in there. So that could be it. Or it could be the fact that the rocket was fired at a very low angle and from very nearby. And it just, I mean, you literally have like 5 seconds. And so that there's not even time for the Iron Dome system to shoot it down because it's just so close. I don't know which of those is the answer, but it's probably one of those two things. Thank you for the super chat. It's very kind of you. That's $30. Thank you. Folks, if you want to follow my other reporting, you can go to chuckholton.locals.com. Locals is plural. Or you can go to the Hot Zone podcast right here on YouTube, where I'm putting up live content every day and a bunch of other content like the full-length interviews that I get that turn into packages that go on CBN. But in the package, I can only give you, 30 seconds of a 30-minute interview. And it's the 30 seconds that I choose to show you. And if you want to get a better sense for what the people actually said, I put the entire uncut interview on my podcast so that you can go watch that stuff and learn more if you really are interested in learning more about the issues here. I know I am. I get a lot out of talking to people and even people that I don't agree with out here. I'm trying to get a hold of some people to teach me more about what's going on in the West Bank from the Palestinian perspective. Why is it that they claim that this is an apartheid issue when literally there's no place in Israel where Palestinians cannot go normally during normal times? And there are plenty of places in the West Bank where Israelis cannot go. Yesterday, an Israeli was murdered, coming home from reserve duty in civilian clothes, driving a civilian car, driving in an area in the West Bank that's that C zone. Okay, remember, if you go back and look at my other lives, I talked about they have A zones, B zones, and C zones. And my understanding of those is the A zone is a place where Israelis literally are prohibited from going. They will die, most likely, if they go into an A zone. They'll get their arms ripped off. That is a zone that is administered and protection is offered by the Palestinian Authority completely. There's B zones, which are kind of half and half, part administered by Israel, protected by Israel, administered by Palestinian Authority, and where Israelis and Arabs might both need to go because they're transit roads that would go through areas to get to places where they have to go. And then there's C zones, which are Israeli public lands and places where the Israeli settlements are. And C zones are open to anybody. Arabs can go there. Israelis can go there. The Israeli settlements are, everybody says that they're illegal. Well, they're not illegal under Israeli law. They have the right to be there. Anybody can go there and build. They get building permits. They go through the process just like you would if you wanted to build a house in Cleveland. You have to get a permit. You have to build the code, things like that. Arabs, on the other hand, I'm told, do not get building permits in the C zones very often. They just build anywhere, and it's very hard under Israeli law to evict them, even if they're building on someone's private property. So the guy that was killed yesterday was actually killed in a C zone. Arabs can go into C zones, but they're just a place where everybody can go, right? Now, I was told today by somebody that watches my show here that there's a lot more to it than that. And I'm sure there is. I mean, these things are impossibly complex and thorny issues. And so I'm sure that from a Palestinian perspective, everything I just told you about A, B, and C zones they're going to think it's not correct. So I want to talk to somebody that looks at it from a Palestinian perspective and get their perspective on it so I can get a fuller understanding of that. But I'm just telling you what I know so far. Okay, so I don't think, to wrap all this up, I don't think that we are going into World War III unless you see America get involved militarily in something. Now, the problem with what we are seeing now, thank you for all the super chats, folks. This is expensive doing this reporting, so we appreciate it. The problem with all of the things that we see happening right now, Ukraine war, the war here in Israel, you know, all of the stuff that's just causing chaos around the world, is that it leaves the door open for bad actors to do the things that they've been wanting to do for a long time, but they were held back from doing it because they didn't want the opprobrium that came from the world. They didn't want to be censured by the world or ostracized by the world. And now they figure, well, everybody's busy. You know, this is the time, everybody's distracted with other things. Now's the time to do it. So I think that's exactly why Azerbaijan is making noises like they want to go into Armenia and attack Armenia proper. They've just successfully taken over Artsakh, the Republic of Artsakh, which they call the Nagorno-Karabakh district, which is an exclave of Armenian people who have lived on that land for literally millennia. Their ancestors are buried there. This is Armenian. I mean, there's no way to deny it. Everything, all of the history in that area is written in Armenian. You see tombstones that are 1,000 years old that are written in Armenian. You see hundreds of churches up there that are Armenian churches, you know, that would date back centuries or even millennia. So there's no denying that the Nagorno-Karabakh district was Armenian area since time immemorial. But because it was surrounded by Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan wanted that land so that they could say they were maintaining their territorial integrity. And so they built up their army and they took it. And they took it because they knew that Russia was too weak to do anything about it. And Russia was the big brother of Armenia at that point. It was supposed to have peacekeepers in there that were stopping this from happening, but they weren't. And they figured, well, the world is distracted right now, so we will take over the Nagorno-Karabakh. By doing so, they forcibly displaced 120,000 Armenians out of that area, who are now refugees or internally displaced people inside Armenia proper. But now Azerbaijan is saying, you know, Armenia, the country, really is Western Azerbaijan. That's not, Armenians don't have a country. That's our land over there too. And the reason they want Armenia is simply because they want to put a pipeline out to the west, and they're kind of landlocked. It's hard for them to do that. They want to put a road through to their exclave of Nakhichevan, which is on the other side of Armenia. So it would not be surprising to see Azerbaijan attack Armenia sometime in the near future, because the whole rest of the world is distracted. And that's the real danger. That's the danger of World War III starting up, is that China says, hey, nobody's looking, we're going to grab Taiwan. You know, somebody else has something in mind that they want to do. I mean, it's just on and on and on. Thank you very much for the super chats. If that were to happen, and more of these conflicts eventually they start to overlap, and the United States gets overwhelmed. We can't police the entire planet all at once. And many people in the United States don't want us to. They don't want us to be the world's policeman anymore. They have a more isolationist mindset. You know, we need to spend our money at home. Well, I get it. I mean, I don't like sending my tax dollars overseas if I don't have to, but we have a choice as Americans. We can either withdraw from the world entirely and leave it to its own devices, which means that Iran and China and Russia are going to essentially take over the rest of the world. They will have hegemony over geopolitics all over the planet. Or we're going to try to stay engaged, and we're going to try to influence world events to our benefit. You know, if you're a America first kind of person, there's an argument to be made that we should be involved in Ukraine, that we should be involved in Armenia, that we should be involved with Israel. Because if we can influence world events in such a way that it creates a safer environment for America and Americans around the world, not just, you know, I mean, during the Gulf War, people said, no blood for oil. It's not just about oil. I mean, natural resources, sure. I mean, it is, I mean, oil is important, and we got to have a safe way to, you know, power our economy. But it's not just about that. It's about what direction the entire world will go. You go back to World War II and look at what would have happened if the United States had not joined the war. Well, there's a very good chance that we'd be having this conversation in German right now. And so there is a case to be made, if you're an America First conservative, that we should be involved in these conflicts around the globe, and that spending a little bit of money now keeps us from having to spend a tremendous amount of money on our military later, fighting a much bigger, much stronger enemy, because we have degraded the enemy's capability, our adversary's capabilities, before going to war without spending any American blood, rather than after. There is a case to be made for that. Thank you very much for the super chat. Daniel, that's very kind of you. So, Crutch, if we got any questions, I'm going to answer questions real quick, and then I'm going to get out of here. I've got some more work to do tonight. But if you have a question, please ask it, and our great moderators will text it to me real quick in a way that I can read it. So I will try to answer those very quickly. Somebody was asking about, what were they asking about? Somebody was asking me on the last chat. Oh, they had asked about why the Iron Dome system couldn't knock down the missiles that came in here to Kiryat Shimona. And I already answered that question. So again, from the northern part of Israel, where it is thankfully very, very quiet. Even those crazy birds have gone away. Wait, just listen. You hear that? That is the sound of no missiles. That's the sound of peace and quiet, tranquility. And maybe it's just for a moment, but I'll take it when I can get it. I am staying in the north tonight up at, if you have heard of Dalton Thomas, the film producer from FAI Studios, he lives up here, and I'm actually staying at his house tonight. And so I'm going to be here in the north covering whatever happens or doesn't happen up here for the next day or two. So please be praying for me and my meetings and the things I'll be doing around here. Thank you for all of the donations and super chats. Really appreciate it. We have people that are coming in from Australia, from Ireland, from South Korea, from South Africa, all over the place. And that's really, really cool. It means a lot that you watch these and are so engaged. It means that you like this format and you like being able to interact, and we like it too. So we're going to keep doing these for as long as I'm here. I don't know how long that'll be, because it just depends on what the situation on the ground is. So let's say a prayer for Israel, and then we'll go. Lord Jesus, we are so grateful that you've given your blessing to Israel, to this land. There's so much history here. It's just like walking through the pages of the Bible. And I'm reminded every day as I travel around here of your promises to not only the people of Israel, but through them to the whole world. So Lord, I thank you for that. I pray that you would preserve Israel, that you would bring peace to the people here, that the Arabs and the Jews and the Christians would all be able to live here side by side in peace. We pray for the children who are being traumatized, even as we speak, in the north and in the south, everywhere where they're under fire, Lord. We pray that you would put a special protection around them, around their psyche, so that they won't be damaged by the terrible things that are happening all around them, the things that are on the news that worry them. So help us to trust more and more in you. Because of this, I pray that the Israelis, that the Christians, that the Arabs would all cry out to you, and that you would be their God and save them, Lord. I pray that you would bring peace in this land. Go with us, Lord, and remind us to pray for these people. Remind us to pray for this situation. I pray that you'd be glorified even in the tragedies that are happening all around us. And you're a great God, so I know that you have the power to do that. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, thank you, folks. I appreciate you watching, and we will see you again tomorrow. Take care.